I'm here just to talk to you about my experience of having dyslexia in third level education and going through nursing with it. Basically, I'm just going to give you a little bit about myself. I have always pretty much known that I've had dyslexia. I was diagnosed when I was in primary school. Really, really lucky. So going and working with remedial services and all that kind of help is something that I'm really confident and I'm really quite comfortable with. I've always been one to go and get the help and really happy to receive it. So basically, I just want you to know how I feel about dyslexia. I don't really, not to sound cliche, but I don't really consider it as a disability. To me, the brain of a dyslexic is wired differently. In an MRI, you would actually see it differently to anyone else. It's got the right hemisphere is actually a little bit larger, especially in the language area. So basically, the wiring is different. So you perceive and you receive information differently to another person. So once you know that about yourself, and once you know that you're not going to comprehend things a little bit faster than another person, but other areas you will, it makes your life a lot easier to understand the way your brain works and what works for you. So I think the main thing is just to kind of come up with strategies for yourself and what works for you and best way of learning. So basically, the things I'm just going to touch on are why I chose nursing and my concerns about the course and everything, and then also disclosing my dyslexia in both the academic setting. When I speak of academic, I'm talking about UCD, and then the clinical placement, which was my training hospital. And then just obstacles that I faced throughout the 4 years and what I'm doing with myself now. So, why nursing? Why nursing? So, basically, I always knew I wanted to work in a hospital. My mum actually works in a hospital as well, so I'm always in and out of it, like when she was working there, and I knew what it's like to work there, and I liked the atmosphere, and I liked what it was. And when I was in school, I'm 10 plus years of sitting at a desk. I knew I didn't want to involve sitting down. That's little or no, sitting down was great for me. So nursing obviously fit those criteria because everyone that's a nurse knows that nobody sits down. You're always on your feet. So that was great for me. And so then when I got my points, I was absolutely delighted. I was just over the moon with it. So I was glad to come here and start the course. So my concerns about the course, honestly, I was not concerned whatsoever with the academic side. Like, as young pupils, we've learned through like desks and blackboards and given like things to learn for a certain date and certain things to study. So that was grand. That was something I was used to. I knew I had a deadline and had to learn for that. But then what I was really quite scared about was the clinical placement, because this was self-learning for the first time. You were put into a situation and it was up to you whether you studied something or not. So it was really quite daunting. And to be honest, I think every student is a bit scared about that, and they will put their hand up about that it's a bit nerve-wracking. But what really excited me about clinical placement was you were going on to a ward and you were learning relevant things that you would use on a daily basis, and that you wouldn't have to be learning unnecessary reams of things that you wouldn't actually use all the time. So that was just really exciting. So this is why I wanted nursing. It was practical and it was up and doing things physically. Okay, so disclosing my dyslexia. So during my freshers week in UCD, probably the only productive thing I did was go to the DSS. The rest of the week was just gone. It was null. But going to the DSS, which is the Disability Service something, I don't know. Yeah, you know it. So basically, what I did is I just went up and I just knocked on the door and I was like, "Hi, I'm dyslexic," and they were like, "Great, come in." And they were just really helpful, and they just sorted me out straight away, there and then, less than 45 minutes. They had my name, they had everything that I needed. And it was just really nice to have that comfort, and they just provided me with such help. So what they did straight away is they set me up and they gave me assistive technology. And they gave me, just one highlight, they gave me a laptop, which had probably the most wonderful program installed on it that I've actually ever had in my life, and I still use to this day. It's unbelievable. It's called Read and Write. Basically, it's a thing that you go on and it reads out to you what you've written, and it also, you can highlight areas that, like journals or articles online, and it will read it back to you. Because for me, reading takes a lot of time. So when I'm trying to study and when I'm trying to read back lit reviews, long things that I've written, if I have something to read back to me, it gets through it a lot quicker, and you're less inclined to get tired and lose concentration, so you get more done. So it seems like, to be honest, it's a very small thing to someone like you guys, but to me it made just such a huge impact, and it was just a really, really great thing to have. So from my point of view of GSS and all this technology, 10 out of 10. Well done. And so disclosing then in the clinical area. So, like I said, really easy in the academic side. I really liked it. But what was quite actually helpful was that when I went into the clinical area, UCD had already liaised with CPCs and people in my hospital that I had dyslexia, so it was known. So I wasn't the first person to make the first steps. Because I just want to make this point, that like, it's quite funny, like I'm really happy to stand up and talk about my dyslexia and everything like that, but if you were to ask me to initiate the conversation first, I'm really quite reluctant and I'm embarrassed about it, because I really do feel, and I know you all understand about it, but there's other people that don't, and they stereotype dyslexics as people that make excuses, that they go in and they give, I'm not doing well, but I'm dyslexic, so that's it. And I don't want to be categorized, and I would rather people didn't know I was dyslexic unless it was actually necessary. And you talk about disclosing only before a person is failing a placement, but sometimes it needs to be done. Sometimes you feel you can go through a placement without having to tell anyone, and it's not necessary. But sometimes it actually is, and it gets really tough, and you need to tell someone, and then it's horrible because you're stigmatized for looking like you're looking for a way out of passing a placement. And that's not true. And it's only because you're looking for the support that wasn't given to you. So sorry, I'm really quite passionate about that, because I had a failed placement on my hospital, and it was purely because I wasn't being looked after. Sorry, but something that was really awful. So basically, talking about my internship year. So I found that really challenging. First, second year, third year, it's not. Yeah, it's a bit worrying, but it's only worrying because you're going into hospital and you're just trying to learn the things. But it's when you're in fourth year, there's such pressure put on you. Everyone turns around to you and they're like, you're a fourth year now, you're an intern, you're part of the staff. And I don't know if that's very fair. I think people should be reminded that you are still a student. You're not actually a registered nurse. And they put the exact same responsibilities on you as a registered nurse. And this goes for all students, not just people with disabilities. So I think that needs to be highlighted. So basically, I have to say though, in my hospital, when times got tough, I always knew I could go to my UCD lecturers, my personal tutors, my CPCs. They were really, really good, and they really did have my back. And that was just something that I knew that I could go back to them if I was having a shitty old time. I could just email them and they would just mail me back and give me actual good solid advice, which was really good. And to have someone that has your side, like, there's something fantastic about that, and that's really good. So yeah, it's a tough thing to disclose because you're openly saying what your faults are, and nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to be like, I'm really bad at handwriting, unless it is like an issue that comes up and then you have to actually admit to it. If you can avoid it, it's kind of better, and you'd rather it just be known, but without you having to say it and embarrass yourself by bringing it up. Okay, so obstacles throughout nursing. So I got a nice little meme there, which I thought was gas. Okay. So basically, the things with obstacles with this, it was with UCD, I thought it was great. Okay. Sufficient up to date. So basically the technology was quite sufficient up to date. So on UCD side, grand, no problems whatsoever. So the main things I want to highlight that were obstacles for me on a clinical placement side was time management for me right now. Not very good. I know. So with dyslexics, it actually is clinically diagnosed and known that you have problems with organization, timekeeping, and planning. So sadly, these are really big parts of when you're working on a placement. And it's just, the thing is with it is, I can't stress enough, I have a tough time already trying to deal with it and time management. And when you have someone in your back being like, you have to get this done, you have to get this done, you're just like, I'm trying, just give me a moment. And the thing with dyslexics, which I find, is that people don't really understand that we need to kind of come full circle and figure out what works for us. Like what works for me. I had little strategies that I came up with that were really fantastic. And the thing is that you just need a little bit of help and understanding that you will come full circle. And time management, honestly, is just something that you learn. There's no other way around it. You just have to have a preceptor and a staff nurse that's patient with the student that has the disability that's trying to get through. Because everyone's trying their best, to be honest. No one's trying to do a crap job. Okay, so another thing is just handover. This one was the big one for me. Okay, so I find it quite difficult to read medical notes and nursing notes aloud. And I get really embarrassed by doing it. So when you're just in front of all your peers and all of your nursing staff and you're fumbling over medical terms and you're trying to read out things that you know aren't making sense, it sounds like you don't know what you're talking about, and it sounds like you weren't paying attention for the whole day, which isn't the case. So this is the really big thing. Just for an experience that I once had a preceptor nurse stand over me and give out to me and bring me to tears because I wasn't reading out a handover. It was a taped handover at that, fluidly and fast enough for everyone else. And I just was physically shaking, and I was so scared because she couldn't understand. She was like, come on, pay attention, do it. And she didn't get that I can't read out that well aloud. And then I had another preceptor who brought me aside 10 minutes before handover, sat me down, her and I, just in a corridor, and she goes, okay, give me the sheet. She's like, hand over to me right now. We did a practice handover, just went through it once over, then I went up, did it, and obviously I made mistakes, but I knew I was looking at her, and she was like, yeah, you're doing well done, keep going. And it was something that I'd already done, and she just had taken the time, because everyone's busy, and just to sit with me and help me do this. So things like that, really, really helpful. Documentation. This one, to be honest, is not, I have to put it up there because obviously it's tough, but nowadays, spell check on your phone, everyone has a smartphone in their pocket, you can check your spelling, it's grand, not a big deal, that's grand. And when you're writing medical notes, to be honest, they're such messy writing anyway, no one will notice if you add an extra E or forget to cross your T, so it's fine. The thing with that is just, it's reading probably the medical notes that I find the most difficult, but everyone's in that boat because that's just illegible scrolls. Okay, so lessons learned. Basically, disclosing dyslexia, I probably would have done it sooner if I could go back in hindsight because I didn't do it enough and I didn't make it more obvious and stand up for myself. And just going with DSS, and that was great. And just talk to your CPCs because they know it and they're very good. They've seen it all before and it's great. Organisation is another thing. If I were to go back, I would definitely just organise my work a lot better. Basically, when you're in your clinical placement and you have to do a little review, people don't understand how nerve-wracking this is because you're only in your second placement in and you're really struggling with the internship because you're just consumed by it. And then when you have this big workload outside your work, it's a huge thing. So just kind of start it sooner than later, can't stress it enough, and there's something really satisfying about handing in your assignment a week before everyone else and you're like, mine's done. It's great. And questioning is something, because I've had dyslexia so long and I know I'm actually quite self-aware and I know what's good for me, and I will always be the one that will ask the stupid question. And because to me, I'm like, why waste my own time? If I don't know something and if I'm not going to sit around and pretend that I'm like, yeah, I understand. If I don't, I'll be like, no, explain that again. And people get frustrated with that and they're like, you weren't listening the first time. And you're like, no, I just need to hear it another time so it'll really sink in. So always question and don't be embarrassed about it. And that's grand. And also relax. This was my big problem. Everyone's overwhelmed in college. It's really, socially it's overwhelming, and obviously on the academic side it is too. But just to go in, relax, everyone's in the same boat, and just not to get, it's not the be all and end all. You'll get through it, you'll be fine. And just at the moment, like I said, I now am qualified and I work in the Royal Free in the acute respiratory, which I absolutely love, and it's just fast paced and kept on my toes, and it's fantastic. I'm really glad to be in nursing because it's something that's really, really developing, and now that I'm in London you can see loads of different areas of nursing you can go into. That's really fantastic, and I'm really happy to be in the career that I am. And just thank you for listening. Yes. Thank you.